Nintendo controllers. I honestly don't know where to start with how much these things changed the world. Not the Virtual Boy specifically, although it did, and I will get to that. But I'm talking about Nintendo in general with their controllers. They did so much. Every controller they have made has impacted the gaming market in some way. Every single one of them. And let's admit, every time a new controller came out, it looked like a freak. Compared to the last one, it was a freak. All the way from back when the NES came out, all the way up to the Switch, all of them really have just been freaks. So, because I am something called stupid, I happen to have most controllers that exist from Nintendo home consoles. So we're going to be comparing every single one of them and what each one did over the last. And we're going to start with, geez, I have too many of these on my desk, the NES. So yes, this is an original NES controller because I have an original NES. And this, really, the only thing that could kind of like compare to it was the Atari 2600 controller, really. And this was the first like kind of proper controller that exists. It's a box and it doesn't break. You got 4 buttons and a D-pad. I mean, this is the real popularization of the D-pad here. First instance, I don't know. There could have been a third-party controller with it for like the Atari or something. This absolutely changed the world. Because, I mean, controllers that people were really used to at the time was literally just like a big box with a stick and a button on it, and also carpal tunnel. For those that have never used an Atari controller, they are horrible. I have way too many of them. But this, it was kind of like, actually kind of like sit back, not really have to pretend you're on an arcade cabinet. This is really just proper Nintendo goodness. And I mean, this is classic. You can see it all the way in the Wii. And I know I'm going to bring this up later, but like you can kind of see the comparison. And this is really what people think when they think of just video game controller. Just simple. It's kind of timeless, but at the same time, it's, you know, really, really old. Does say made in Japan, so, you know, it won't break. This thing has not broken. This is from the 80s. And even then, with this, you can kind of see it in the Game Boy. There was another NES controller called like the dog bone, because it was literally a dog bone, and you see that in the SNES controller. I don't have a dog bone controller because those came with top loaders and I don't have a top loader, but you can clearly see the influence in the Game Boy when it comes to the NES controller. But when the 4th generation of consoles came out, Nintendo needed something new. It seems like they had 2 priorities: make it ugly and give more buttons. That led us to, oh, goodness, another mess of cables. I'm sorry guys, I haven't touched my console setup in a while, and the reason is that I don't have a TV right now because the old one, the power cable broke, so I'm getting a new one simply. Anyways, this thing, in my opinion, has had more influence in the modern aspect than this. And the reason is simple. If we take any kind of modern controller, you still see this button layout. There's 2 menu buttons, 4 face buttons, a D-pad, and shoulder buttons. This was really the first controller to like actually properly implement that. And this is probably one of my favorite controllers ever, besides the PlayStation 2. I do like the PS2 controller more than this, and that's just because of the joysticks. But this definitely feels proper in the hands. And with all these buttons, that led to better games, basically. Yeah, you could control better. I mean, that's the point of a controller, to control better. This was a massive upgrade in terms of this. In terms of durability, not too much, because apparently this broke a lot more than the NES controller. I haven't had that issue yet, though. But I will say that this American version is just ugly compared to the Japanese version. The Japanese version has all like colorful buttons. I'm pretty sure it's lighter as well. This just seems like something you'd see. This just looks ugly. This just looks just depressing. With RPGs becoming bigger on consoles, I do gotta say, this was perfect for games like, you know, Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy IV, stuff like that. I forget what Dragon Quest game came out at the time, but I mean like Chrono Trigger, oh, best game ever. At least best RPG. Don't kill me, guys. It's true. Accept it. And I mean, the influence on this can still be seen today, especially on PlayStation. And if you look at that PS1 controller, it's pretty much the same as this, except it just has an extra thing of shoulder buttons before, you know, the joysticks came in. But Nintendo really felt like saying, throw all tradition out the window. Let's make something weird. And when they said make something weird, I don't think anyone expected the spaceship. I gotta admit, this thing is a disaster. This is just awful. I love the Nintendo 64. It's my favorite game console ever. But I gotta admit, this controller is just it's just a mess. I mean, one joystick in the center of all things, a D-pad here, a C-pad here. I mean, you do see the C stick in the GameCube controller, which is coming up. But I mean, like, this is how most games are played, and this is just uncomfortable. They do have the Z button on the back. This was huge, actually. The Z button. not many people know, but the Z button did a lot. I really have no words with how weird this thing is. I gotta say, this thing on the back was kind of cool. This little cartridge port, because you could get things like, where is it? You could get things like the rumble pack. Takes 2 AAAs, you know, and then you just plunk it in, and now your controller got rumble or vibration, which, let's be honest, was pretty cool at the time. Goldeneye was planning on doing a thing, or Rare, I should say, with Goldeneye was planning on doing a thing where you could reload your weapon by literally just, and then that would have been cool as heck, but, you know, of course they didn't do that. This thing is probably the worst designed controller ever made. Also, this joystick in the middle is so bad. I gotta admit, this joystick is awful. Every single third-party controller got this better, because this should not be this flimsy. This actually used to be my best one, and now it's the worst when it comes to how flimsy it is. Like, I'm telling you guys, all my controllers do this with the N64. It's just terrible. It's just not good. I get it. They wanted to do something new, 3D games, so you have a joystick, but this is not how you do it. So many games just straight up don't use the left D-pad at all, and that was like the most iconic thing Nintendo ever did, was add the D-pad as a standard. And now they've relegated it to the left side of a controller that people hold like this. This is awful. This is terrible. So many third-party controllers that have been made put the joystick like over here next to the D-pad, and some of them I like, but honestly, with like first-person shooters and stuff like Goldeneye, Perfect Dark, Quake 2, Doom 64, it's kind of terrible, because like, what are you supposed to do with this? So many people nowadays are used to the joystick on the right side. That's why I specifically play first-person shooters on the N64 like this, so that way the aiming's on the right side and movement's on the left, and the buttons are still all accessible. I like this method. If anyone here has played Goldeneye or Perfect Dark, set your control method to 1.2 and play like this. It's way better. You can actually like aim, but the N64 controller was it's iconically bad. Definitely still as iconic as these other ones, but for the wrong reasons. Now, you saw in the video, I put this guy down. Don't worry, guys, I got it like this. I got this from a friend of mine who just had this broken controller, and he was like, hey, do you just want this Virtual Boy controller? And I was like, sure, I don't know what I'll do with it. But I've realized something. The Virtual Boy is why I say Nintendo did more for the gaming industry than anything ever. Because the Virtual Boy is why virtual reality exists today. I will say that, and I will die on that hill. Also the Wii, but I'll get back to that. Because, like, this controller is way more genius than a lot of people think. Like, yeah, it's 2 D-pads, kind of weird. 2 buttons on each side, kind of weird, especially select and start. And triggers on the back, yeah, kind of weird. But let me go grab something that I have. So those that have been here a while know that I play a lot of virtual reality games. And, is it just me, or is there a similarity here? Like, a massive similarity. Look, 2 D-pads, now they're joysticks. 2 face buttons, now they're here. Triggers on the back, and this is every virtual reality controller. This is the Valve Index. The HTC Vive, very much the same. The Oculus Quest, very much the same. Like, people don't realize that the Virtual Boy did a lot more than just suck as a console. This thing changed a lot of stuff. There's a cat at my door. Is the video being derailed by Snow or Baxter this time? Oh, it's Snow. Hey, big guy. Wanna come in? I already fed you like a few hours ago. What's up? What's up? Alright, just want some dry food. Okay. Come on. There's stuff in the bowl, dude. Here, come on. Listen, I get it. I have hot takes a lot. Some of my hot takes include ET for the Atari 2600 is a hidden gem and no one recognizes it. The Virtual Boy was not as bad as people think it was, and the new 3DS XL is garbage. Like, I get it. My takes are fire, and my biggest hot take is probably Nintendo is the reason virtual reality is big today. Anyways, as the ominous pile of stuff grows, we're gonna look at another freak controller. Goodness gracious, I actually just don't like this. All right, coming from the year 2001, a few months before the Xbox, is the GameCube. And listen, if I ever go missing for saying this, blame the Super Smash Bros. Melee community. I don't like the GameCube controller. I think this design is just backwards, honestly, because, like, sure, it's an upgrade from the N64, but it's just kind of off. It's still missing some things. It has the Z button, sure, but why is it only on one side and right here? It has a start button, but why only one? Where is select? Sure, it has a second joystick, but what is this? let's be honest, what is this design? I'm sorry this is dirty, guys. I kind of had to find one, and all my controllers were kind of buried, because let's just say my living room's still a mess from setting up everything. I'll be honest, this C-stick is just awful. It feels like my finger's going to slip off at any point because it doesn't really have any grip to it. I mean, granted, the regular joystick is a huge upgrade from the N64, because one, it actually feels tight, and two, it's rubber instead of plastic, so my thumb doesn't slip off of it when I'm getting sweaty from playing first-person shooters like Goldeneye. Well, I mean on the GameCube, it's Metroid Prime. I'll be honest, the triggers, while they are analog, sure, they still feel just kind of off with the fact that they click when they bottom out. And once again, the Z button is just terrible. I know that on GameStop branded ones, they would replace this with like a turbo thing, which was cool, honestly. But like at the same time, this just kind of doesn't feel right as a controller. This button layout right here is just so weird. This feels more like a Tiger layout than an actual controller. I also gotta say, on all my GameCube controllers, the buttons don't feel the best, I'll be honest. The D-pad feels fine, but these face buttons just feel kind of just mushy. Now, I'm not saying that this is a bad controller. I'm just saying it's weird. Granted, it is 2001, and the real standard has not really existed yet. Granted, this is also Nintendo. Every controller they've made is weird. But there is one thing that came out that really just kind of got everything right, and that's when Nintendo kind of returned to their roots. Now, I don't have a GBA, but thanks to the magic of having something really old, you can still kind of see where the influence is here. It's the Nintendo DS. Guys, stop mentioning this break. This is common. If you look for a used DS on eBay, you will see this break more than you would think. Look, 2 menu buttons, 4 face buttons, same layout as well. D-pad, shoulder buttons, a touchscreen. Yeah, I mean, this kind of just got it right. This is one of the best control schemes I've ever seen, honestly. And it's very clear that they liked this and stuck with it because it seems to exist on every console after it in some way. And obviously every other game controller for other platforms seems to copy this SNES layout in some way. Forced face buttons, D-pad, 2 menu buttons. So the DS really got a lot of things right. And obviously these 2 buttons here, these are the GBA buttons because, you know, backwards compatibility, my beloved. So, I mean, Nintendo was in a good spot when the DS came out. They had a good control scheme. They just had a pretty good console. It didn't sell the best, honestly. And, you know, what could come next? Hey, people like watching TV, right? Let's make our next controller a remote. Nintendo Wii controller, I'll be honest. This is actually my Wii remote from when I was a kid. This came with my original Wii, and this thing is legendary. I love this. This is a great controller. These do not break unless you are a professor. And I mean, it fits nice in the hand all the way from back when I was a kid to now. Like, this feels great. And the fact that you could, you know, turn it on its side, and now you have an NES controller. This was great for Virtual Console as well. This thing is what I would say the perfect weird controller. And you see that port at the bottom? That's for accessories. All of a sudden, now you have a joystick with a C button that comes back. It came back, fellas. And a C button for whatever reason. And you know, you take the plug of the nunchuck, and now you can get mad at Matt in Wii Sports because you cannot beat Matt in boxing without sacrificing your left lung. Ah, geez, this really is dirty. I'm sorry, I don't use this nunchuck anymore. And that's because, Wii Sports just became the best-selling single console game of all time. Let's follow it up with a sequel. What's that? We need better tracking on our controllers? Let's release a little puck that you stick it to the bottom and then stick the nunchuck into. I don't have any of those with me, and that's because Nintendo released an updated version with Wii Motion Plus inside. This, I'll be honest, okay, let me take the condom off. Nintendo always wanted you to use these, and let's admit it, guys, none of us used them. This controller, I will say, timeless. The Wii Motion Plus variant, oh god, it has batteries in there. So, with Wii Motion Plus inside, this gave you way better tracking and movement in a lot of games, and it was required for Wii Sports Resort, the best sequel to any game ever. With this bottom port, you could have other accessories. Like, probably my favorite thing for the Wii, you had the classic controller. Well, this is the Classic Controller Pro because, you know, it has this and the better Z button layout. The original Classic Controller was a lot more like an SNES controller, but this one is kind of more like a PlayStation, and I enjoy this a lot. I wrecked so many kids on Goldeneye Online with this thing. Sigmas 9 for life. And while, yes, many of these accessories were good, you also had big stinkers. The Zapper. Oh, speaking of the Zapper, I am risking monetization for this, and I actually kind of forgot to bring this up The NES gun. Listen, on Splatoon, I've been an NZAP main since 1. I have to have one of these. This used light gun technology back in the 80s, and it was really cool. It was really accurate. This one does still work, so I'm really happy that I have this. I'm risking everything by having that up on my screen. Back to this garbage. This came out, I think, with Link's crossbow training, which was just a freaking Legend of Zelda thing. And you load this in there, take the holes for the screws, sink it in there, pop the bottom off, feed it through there, rotate this a million times. God, this thing is awful. And then you feed it out here. Close that up. Can you tell that, like, not many people liked these? And then guess what? You put it here. And there you go. You have a Wii gun. These are awful because there's just so many things wrong with this. Why is this a trigger? Because every game that used this had this be the trigger, and it's just not good. I don't know of a single game that had the back thing be the trigger like it should be. I really only remember getting this so I could try it with Goldeneye, and it was the most miserable experience ever. Also, Metroid Prime was awful with it. I did try Metroid Prime 3 with this. It was terrible. I hated it. And that's about as much as I've done with this. So let's take this out because, oh my goodness gracious, this is just awful. Oh my goodness, please, please, please let my Wii remote go. Listen, any Counter-Strike fan knows how to rush B with this thing. I'll just say that. So after the genius thing that was the Wii with this amazing thing and this godly controller, what did Nintendo come up with next for their next system? And I'm not counting the 3DS here, guys. There's like nothing changed except for the joystick on the 3DS and then the thing on the new 3DS. And I don't want to talk about that. Hey, kids are liking iPads now. Let's make one into our controller. Now, listen, I'm going to be the first person to say the Wii U was not that bad. I actually quite enjoyed the Wii U. It's my main Wii thing since I don't need a Wii for backwards compatibility because I have a GameCube. And the Wii U plays Wii games just fine. What if it breaks? Sure, it was a TV remote. I'm not turning this on because I don't want to turn my Wii U on. Sure, you had a stylus because it's a touchscreen. I will say, way cooler than a lot of people think. The Switch was very clearly influenced by this thing. There is one huge thing that this gamepad could do. You see this little bar here that has the camera in it? That's a Wii sensor. If you wanted to, which I did quite a bit, you could have your Wii game projected onto this, have this plugged in, and point your Wii remote at that little sensor and it would work just fine. I played Wii Sports Resort on this and I'll admit that's really cool. Plug this in here, has its own speakers. A lot of people give this thing crap. Thankfully, this hasn't broken and I hope that it never does. Because I mean, like, how do you even sync up a new gamepad? I have no idea, guys. I don't know why Nintendo did this. This is the weirdest controller that Nintendo has done. Weirder than the N64 because you can tell they've never done it again unless you have my pick for the actual worst quality controllers ever, the Joy-Cons. I think it is abundantly clear by now how awful these are. They come with little ends on them. I don't have them, but what that does is kind of make it so these L and R buttons can be pressed better, and now you have a tiny controller here. It's terrible. These things are tiny. Now, granted, I like them. I like them for what they are. They are very clearly a combination of like the Wii remote and like an SNES controller. But here's the thing, they break way too much. This left Joy-Con here, for anyone that watched my old Splatoon stream, and I'm gonna start doing them again, guys, don't worry. This left Joy-Con is heck. It drifts so badly, and I have no idea how Nintendo is not losing lawsuits against these things because they keep winning them. And, you know, with your Switch, at least the Switch OLED, which is what I have, you get this little thing to make it like an actual controller, and I got to Splatoon S Plus on this thing. Don't ask how or why. I don't really have much positive to say about Joy-Cons, I'll just be honest. And I'm not saying anything trash about any of these controllers, except for this. These things are built like garbage and they break way too easily. But let's say you want to play a Switch game and not be miserable. There's one thing you'll need to get. The Pro Controller. The Wii U had its own Pro Controller. I never got one. I had no reason to. And I do gotta say, this thing is pretty well built. This is actually good. This is like an actual controller. Now, obviously, this is a Splatoon 3 version because, you know, I'm a squid, I'm a kid. Like, this thing came out when the PS4 and Xbox One was out, and it just doesn't feel as good as a PS4 or Xbox One controller. Granted, like, the screenshot button, I'll admit, is pretty cool. Instant capture, yeah, that's pretty cool. But I'm pretty sure the PS4 already had that. If this thing holds a comparison to any other controller, it's most like the GameCube. And I mostly say that just because of the joystick arrangement. And I'll be honest, why do we still do this? This is terrible. You either have 2 joysticks up here or 2 joysticks down here. You don't need this backwards arrangement. This is so uncomfortable, I will admit. Listen, I complain a lot about controllers. My favorite controller still is the PlayStation 2. PlayStation, I'll admit, hasn't really changed much since the PS1 controller. And that's the real thing about timeless design. But here's the thing with Nintendo. Without all these controllers, we wouldn't be where we are today on the gaming market, let's be honest. Like, without this, virtual reality would not be the same. It probably wouldn't even exist. Without this, every controller would be a freak show, like the Atari Jaguar. Without this, we'd still be using physical arcade joysticks. Without this, we wouldn't know what actual design is. Without this, Melee players would be quiet for once. And of course, without these, we wouldn't know what actual quality is. And let me tell you, everything in here has something quality about them. Even you. And, well, that's really all I can leave off with this. This is really every Nintendo controller that's kind of been a thing. And if you were to ask me which of these is my favorite, I'd actually probably go with the Wii Classic Pro Controller. Yes, it's the most like the PS2 I get. Oh, stop. Okay, boxes are falling. And, well, I don't really have a way to end this video. I'll just be completely honest. I mean, this is every Nintendo controller that's really been big. So, yeah, I'll see ya. It's hard to see. Baxter's purring right now, though. So here, let's go and try to pet him. Oh, now you don't want to attack me because I'm petting you. And you're on camera, and you don't want to seem like... Oh, there he goes. You don't want to seem like an evil guy on camera, do you? You just want to seem like innocent little Baxter. But in reality, you're a little demon. Oh, there he is. Oh, he's feisty. Cha-cha-cha, papa. Cha-cha, papa. We love Baxter.